Cool. So we're gonna assemble our veggies to start us off and just get all of our veggies nice and chopped. I have some carrots, onion, again, our flavor profiles here. The carrots add some sweetness to the dish. And for you who might be somebody who chases your vegetables around your cutting board, I'm going to slice these in half. I'm pinching my knife and I'm keeping my fingers nice and tucked under. I'm using 3 carrots just because this carrot isn't very big. So again, you can adjust this recipe to what you have on hand and your personal flavor preferences. I really like carrots because they add a nice sweet sugariness to our dishes. And I'm just cutting these into half moons because again, if we were feeling a little less comfortable with our knives, cutting these carrots in half give us a nice flat edge to work with. So we don't have to worry about them rolling and there being any slippage. And I'm keeping them pretty small, depending on how much time, what your kitchen ventilation is, how hot it is in your home. Keeping things small just means that we're gonna have a faster cook time. Is anyone else working with different ingredients?
I'm gonna add a bell pepper to mine.
Yeah, what color?
Orange.
Ooh, all right. Love that.
Yeah.
That would play perfectly off the turmeric.
Mm-hmm.
I'm adding spinach and chickpeas.
Delicious, absolutely. Sometimes I like to make this and then put it on top of spinach, so it's like a cold curried veggie salad. And chickpeas are a great thing to add into any of these dishes because I like that their size makes them a little heartier. They play a little better with some of our other ingredients. They're a little meatier, where if we added maybe some red lentils, that would also be tasty, and those would probably dissolve by the time we are done because they're so small and pretty soft. I'm gonna cut my
Wait,
cabbage.
I have red lentils.
You
How
have
do you?
red lentils?
Yeah, how do you not make a mush then?
Oh, add them in for like the last 10 minutes.
Okay.
So I would say let's cook veggies until they look soft and then add the lentils. And you'll just be then looking to your lentils to pull off if you don't like them mushy. I like red lentils because they add, similar to our last week's recipe with our beans, they just add a creaminess when they do cook down.
Okay.
But I would say about 10 minutes because I feel like 15 is usually well done. So take a look at 10 and see if you like the texture of your lentils. And then be mindful that your dish will keep cooking. So if they're perfect when you pull them off, your dish is gonna still keep cooking. So you want them just underdone if you don't want them mush. And I'm chopping up some green cabbage that we have left over from our teriyaki night. I just had it in a Ziploc bag in the fridge, and the reason I love cabbage and carrots is just they last so long in the fridge and I don't have to worry or feel pressured to get through my veggies in any particular fashion. And next we're going to go for our onion. Again, remembering my personal preference for onions is cutting them in half, again keeping that flat edge and keeping the root ball intact, or the roots intact, cutting through them, and then that will keep our onion slices together. And I'm gonna be dicing our onion just nice and small, trying to get all of those flavors incorporated into each bite. This is also a great recipe if you want to double it and then prep all your veggies and then put it in a bag in the freezer. And then whenever you need some curry, some nice veggie base, just bring them out, throw it in a pan, and you're good to go. Which is basically making your own frozen bagged veggies, which is what I'm using right now because that was what was available. All right.
Mallory,
Yeah.
when you said keeping the root intact with the,
So we're keeping this on until the very end, and we're slicing not all the way through. So that's keeping it intact. And then do you see how my onion's not going anywhere? So it hasn't turned into
yeah,
hundreds of pieces. And this also helps with the tears factor.
and it's okay if you cut it like in half, like because you cut the root in half pretty much,
Correct.
right? But that was okay?
That was okay. I like to cut them in half because, again, that gives us our nice solid flat surface to cook with, to cut with. But you just want to ideally keep about half of your root intact because that will keep your onion together while you're cutting it.
If you, in theory, cut it like not through the root, but the other way,
You see
and
what I do?
then,
Like this? Or do you say this way?
yeah, like cut it like that to get the flat surface part, and then kind of do, I mean, I'm just spitballing here, but
Totally.
just
Totally.
wouldn't
Honestly,
that,
I would say try it. But for me personally, I love cutting it the other way because if we were to cut it this way, then we would have the root on one side and just the bulb head on the other, and that doesn't stay together as much. That's just paper for the.
makes sense.
But no, before I learned this trick, I would always get really confused as to which way I was cutting an onion, and cutting it the other way gives you nice long strips, which sometimes can be nice if you're trying to caramelize onions. You would do that if you were making like a nice onion soup or something really luscious. So it really depends on what you're trying to use your onions for. If you think of like a classic hamburger, that's just a slice through the whole onion. Onion rings. I usually go for dicing just because it's easier to eat and you get more of that onion flavor incorporated.
That makes sense.
But try it out. And it's all onion. So no matter how you cut it, you're still getting that nice onion flavor. Any other questions? I'm smashing my garlic, doing about 2 cloves. Ooh, I'm starting to tear up a little bit from that onion. So interesting which ones set me off and which ones don't. And this one's been in my fridge, which I've heard is a better way. If you can keep your onions in the fridge, that will again just kind of reduce the active amount of, tearing up, the active amount of the onion that oxidizes with our environment and produces that nice oniony aroma as well as the tears. And I'm just gonna do nice little baby slices on this and go back through and chop. If you have a garlic press or anything like that, this is also a great time to bust that out. I just want them fine. This is gonna be the base of our curry flavor. All right, and for those of you who prefer the top view, take a look over at this screen. We'll see how long this lasts. I totally had this going over our pasta pot last week and basically ended up steaming my phone and it turned off. So we'll keep it for as long as we have. I'm turning on the heat to my pot and I'm gonna wait for my pot to get nice and hot. This is important because we're gonna be blooming some of our spices if you have them. So I don't know where other people came in, but again, I don't have any curry powder, not a big deal. I have a lot of the ingredients that go into curry powder. Curry powder is something that is a British invention taken from the spice trade. Usually it almost always has turmeric in it if you're thinking of a traditional British Indian spice curry blend. There's also curries found in other cultures, pretty much throughout Southeast Asia. There's a variety of curries. Curry doesn't actually mean anything. It just means a blend. Similar to people when they say chai tea, that doesn't mean anything. Chai is just a type of tea, so it's just chai, just tea. We have coriander and cumin, and those are what I'm going to be using in my spice blend, and some sort of pepper. This is a hot pepper, so cayenne. And I'm feeling the heat on this. That feels about good. I'm adding about a tablespoon of oil. We're gonna want a nice amount to get our seeds nice and fragrant. So we see this a lot in different cultures, is toasting your seeds first, and this releases and unlocks their secret potential. So I'm using about a teaspoon of each. If you're using fresh seeds, they tend to be less concentrated of a flavor, so you will need to use a little bit more of them. Similar to turmeric, if you ever use the root of turmeric, it's similar to ginger. We would, if we had some, we would shave it really finely on a small box grater, but we would need a lot more of it because it has a higher water content. So it doesn't have that concentrated flavor that you get when you dry out and pulverize your spices. And so I'm waiting for my seeds to be fragrant, which is about a minute.
Should I already?
Mallory?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, sorry.
Whoever's first.
Should I have the curry powder in already?
Yes, I would add, if you don't have the spices, then I would just add your curry powder and give it a swish in the oil, and then add your onions.
How much curry powder should I add?
I would add a tablespoon and then see how you like it. You can always add more.
So I have a question on, it's mainly about the seeds and whatnot. And so I've always been confused by like all the different spices and seeds, just because it all kind of, I guess my question is, how do we know which, like, so you mentioned the turmeric, coriander, cumin, and cayenne.
Yes.
And then you mentioned something called curry powder.
Mm-hmm.
And is curry powder like the amalgamation of all those spices?
Correct. Just like a teriyaki sauce would always have brown sugar, soy sauce, ginger. You're kind of looking for those individual ingredients that build up the sauce.
And then what is turmeric, or like, okay, so coriander you said was cilantro, but the seed. And then what does turmeric do?
Great question. In kind of nutritional medicine, turmeric is one of those powerhouse spices. It is high in anti-inflammatories. You'll actually see turmeric sold in pill form or even as a topical. It's also used as a dye, so be careful. This will definitely be bright yellow by the end. And again, it's derived from a root similar to ginger. And you can sometimes find them at specialty grocery stores sold just in root form. And so at this point, I've added all of my kind of harder vegetables and the things that add flavor. So my onions, my carrots, my curry spice, and I'm just kind of letting it hang out for a moment. And then I'm gonna add my starchy vegetables. If you have potatoes, sweet potatoes, that would be a great time to add these. I'm going to be adding some frozen cauliflower to just round out and give some nice creaminess, similar to what some people experienced last week with the veggie pasta, and just some nice chunks. I also have bagged rice cauliflower, which is just grated cauliflower. But I decided to go with this one because I like, personally like the chunks in my curry. Like eating a different vegetable covered in my delicious spice blend rather than having them kind of all chopped up and into a finer mush. But that is totally your preference.
Okay. So what is cumin?
Cumin is another type of spice. I don't know what its plant variety is. I don't think it's a similar situation. And I'm adding my cabbage now. If you want your cabbage to be crispier, I would hold off and wait and add it to the end. So maybe add it with your red lentils.
When should I add garlic?
Garlic goes in now. And so I'm starting to smell tasty things coming from my pot. I've reduced my heat to medium to make sure nothing's burning on me. And now I'm going to add my tomatoes. And the tomatoes are just going to kind of give that nice liquid and really absorb any of the delicious flavor you've added with your spice blend and your oil.
If I have a can of tomatoes, do I put all the juices in as well from the can?
Correct. I just dumped my whole can, diced tomatoes. If you can get fire roasted tomatoes, that's my personal preference. Again, that caramelization on the tomatoes have just added that much more flavor. But it doesn't really matter. That's just one of my secret flavor depth ingredients is roasted tomatoes. And so now I'm just going to put my lid on. I'm turning my heat way down. And we're essentially just cooking until our cauliflower is tender, or whatever your biggest kind of chunkiest vegetable is. For those of you using beans or lentils, those can get thrown in now as well. And if you're at all concerned about your liquid and you feel like it won't be able to simmer, you can add a little bit of water, or you can start in with your coconut milk. But I really like to use my coconut milk to finish things off, or just be mindful that you keep the heat really low with your coconut milk. If you were watching, I added my whole can of coconut milk because I don't know what else I will do with my coconut milk. And I'm like mine to be a little saucier because I'm a deep, deep lover of rice. And so anything that gives me sauce to pour and have my rice absorb is always good for me. I think had I done this a little differently, or if I had plans for my coconut milk, I would really just take a lot of that cream and just go cream. So you have that really nice, viscous, creamy curry. This would also be a good time, if I had some red lentils, I might throw that in to thicken it up. And I would that would cook off some of this liquid. I'm not too worried by it because, again, I love having a little more runnier, soupier because the sauce is so tasty. But if you're concerned about texture, being mindful of adding liquid or adding things that will absorb that liquid. We could also throw some white rice in here and then cook it for another 10 minutes and absorb some of that liquid. And then you have what I lovingly call a one-pot wonder. And everything goes in your pot. It's ready to go. You could even throw your pot in the fridge, no dishes, for those of us who are dish-phobic. And it's just super easy. So I'm gonna let this simmer a little bit just to reduce down. That is pretty much the recipe. Does anyone have any questions? Where are people